You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called
The Wonderful World of Wardini Books.
My pleasure, as always, to have in the wonderful Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. How you been going, all right?
George Ken, yes, very well this end. Yourself?
Oh, yeah, you've been managing to keep healthy. There's so much sickness around us. But
No, I'm really healthy at the moment.
Same here, touch wood.
Yep.
I'm like a machine.
Yeah. Always thought
man.
that about you. That Ken,
right.
he's a machine.
He's a machine. And we've got three fabulous books today. We're going to start off with a kid's book, and we were talking about it before we came to air. It's called Inside Bubble Earth.
Yes, and it's by Des Hunt, who's extremely beloved and well known as a New Zealand author who writes young adult and sort of teen and slightly younger fiction, and lots of sort of outdoorsy stuff. Real Kiwi tales.
Yeah.
So he's turned his mind in this one, because he's a teacher, I think, by profession, to climate change. And we were talking off air about how kids are getting really anxious about
Yes,
it.
they are.
Because it's being forced down their throat, and it's like your world is going to be completely screwed, and it's your responsibility to do something about it. And you and I both agreed, no, let children be children.
Yes.
Let's not make the anxiety worse. So Des has got hold of this, and he's like, right, okay, kids are getting really anxious about stuff. Let's reassure them. Let's give them some facts, and let's put it into context. And I just adore him for it. I think it's a really cool book. So in this one, the way it begins is about bubbles. So inside Bubble Earth, because all kids know about bubbles, because we've all been in one.
Yeah.
We've been in our family bubble, and
we?
little children have grown up with that, and it's completely normal for them. It's bizarre, isn't it? And then we've been in our regional bubbles and our country bubble, but what he's talking about here is that the whole earth is a bubble, so we've got to look after that and we've got to think about it. But let me give you some context. So he actually starts, the introduction is a story about a kid in a forest, and he's had a brilliant day, and there's a competition to go and, among the family, who can get the most pine cones, and then you get the treat if you get the most pine cones. So he boggers off into the forest and he's collecting all the pine cones, and it's getting dusky, and he just sees these eyes glowing in the dark, and he's convinced that it's a monster that's going to eat him, and they never go back to that forest again. And then what Des's story does is, if he'd actually stopped and looked properly and it had been a bit lighter, he would have seen it was a lamb looking for its mother, and that would have been a completely different kettle of fish. And this is his analogy for look at what the facts say.
Yeah.
And then he goes on, and it's absolutely chocker full of science. So he's talking about COVID-19 and how we all went into our bubbles. And then he talks about different kinds of bubbles, about beginnings. It's beautiful. I love those in utero photographs. And that's
Fabulous.
a squid just up there.
Yes.
And that one's an egg, and about how we all start in a bubble, really.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and then he talks about a climate survival story. So he's talking about the tuatara and how it varies how long it takes them to hatch, and whether they're male or female. And he talks about that. And he talks about how tuatara have been around for millions of years, and how Aotearoa has seen different sorts of climate change. So it's had an ice age, and it's had a warming period of quite intense global warming. And then, we're going through, yes, this is man-made, this one, and we really do need to do something about it. But it's happened before, and the tuatara have survived.
Yes, indeed.
So, and then he goes into, so he's certainly not denying climate change at all, but he's explaining how it's happened before, and that tuatara will be in a great deal of trouble, because if the earth continues to warm like this, all the tuatara will be male.
Yes, they will.
There are obvious consequences to that.
That's right.
And but this is what we can do about it. And I just really like the way that he builds it up. And then he talks about what got the dinosaurs, and then he talks about the science of climate change, and he talks about all sorts of things. And then right at the very end, when we've done all the fascinating science, and it's all very reassuring, then he talks about personal responsibility.
Yeah.
You could grow some plants, because we know that we need plants to create oxygen. You could, do your recycling. But it's not... It's all your fault. You have to do something about it now, even though you're 5. It's not like they're all...
Because we think of climate change and we immediately think doom and gloom. But by the sound of that, it comes out with a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what kids need. OK, this is an issue. It's happened before, and we definitely need to do something about it, but we need to do it collectively. and positively. And thank you, Des.
And isn't it amazing, we'll just stick with that book for one more minute, it's amazing, I think, because I'm pretty dumb, how the temperature can affect the gender for tuatara.
Yeah.
How weird is that?
And crocodiles and turtles and anything that hatches buries their eggs. And yeah, because there's no other heat source, it's the sun beating down on the sand or wherever they've buried them. And yeah, certain temperatures, cooler temperatures are female, higher temperatures are male. Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
It is quite incredible, whereas ours is based on the DNA of the parents,
Yeah.
what gender the child's going to be.
Tell us about going fast to sleep.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go from climate change to... So I read this book, it's Michael Mosley's book, Dr. Michael Mosley. And he's quite famous for his fasting diet books.
Yep.
And he's done one about gut health, and he's done one about blood sugar. And so he experiments on himself when he's got ideas. You know, he is a scientist, so I always find when I read him, he puts the science in layman's terms. So in this one, my husband Gareth, is a terrible sleeper. And so I decided to read this so that I could then nag him about the things he needs to do in order to have a good night's sleep. So I really like the combination in this one. It's like all his books rammed together.
Yeah.
So the way that you eat affects your sleep, and certain sort of exercises help your sleep, but again, all in really easy terms. So it goes on about the science of sleep and how, before the industrial age, when we had to get up at 7 o'clock and we worked 9 till 5 or we worked whatever, and then we're now expected to sleep 8 hours at night because that's the healthy thing to do. People didn't used to do that. They'd go to bed when it got dark. Quite often people would get up in the night for a couple of hours, potter about, do something, go back to sleep again, then get up, Really? So, yeah, broken sleep. Yeah. What we see as broken sleep wasn't always broken sleep. It was just natural rhythms, circadian rhythms. So the history of sleep, and probably why you're a person that wakes at 2 in the morning and can't get back to sleep for an hour, doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. And this is how you can cope with that. Yeah. And then how gut health is related to sleep, and how there are healthy foods like fermented foods and stuff like that that can help your gut biome or whatever it is.
Yum.
And I've been eating a lot of pickled cabbage recently.
Yum.
And how that helps you to sleep. And when you exercise and raising your body temperature and making sure that it cools again before you go to sleep. So I found it really fascinating because there are really practical, quite easy things that you can do, but you got to do them,
And easy read?
It's a really easy read, and as well, it's sort of broken up into... Do you know, like the way their text is actually broken up into paragraphs and with subheadings? Okay, so you're snoring probably because you're a bit thick around the neck and you might be quite thick around the middle, and you can fix that, and sleep apnea is quite dangerous as well, where you stop breathing because you can die. But again, easy fixes.
So when you talk to Gareth tonight, is there a recommendation? Are you going to say, Gareth, you need 5, 6, 7, 8 hours every night? Does he recommend that? Is there a minimum, or just...
There's a chart somewhere at what age you're at and how teenagers need more sleep, but they're not getting it because they're up all night gaming and stuff like that. But the really quick fixes are, if you're waking up in the night and you can't get back to sleep, don't just lie there and put your brain into a tiz. Get up and do something.
Absolutely right.
Get up and read a book and make yourself tired again and then go back to sleep. So there's some really practical advice in there. I liked it a lot.
Very good. So you gave it a 9 out of 10?
Yeah, for what it is,
Excellent.
I like health books.
Now, the next book, right up my street, The Thursday Murder.
It's brilliant, Richard Osman.
Thursday Murder Club.
Yeah, Thursday Murder Club. So what happens this is a new generation of fiction, if you like, a new genre. I think one of my reps came up with a really good description of it, and Gareth and I were racking our brains trying to remember what she'd said, but it's something like rest home noir. Yeah. Where the old people actually get to do cool stuff. Yeah. They're not just the figure of fun or pity in a book. And in this one, it's kind of an upscale rest home. So it's like Mary Doyle, but a bit posher, even though Mary Doyle's very lovely. And 4 members of this community meet on a Thursday and they review cold cases. One of them, Elizabeth, you're not quite sure where she's coming from, but she's clearly in her past been some kind of MI5, MI6, or some kind of spy.
Secret agent.
Yeah, secret agent. And she's still got contacts and favours that she can call in when she wants information. And there's a psychiatrist, Ibrahim, and there is a nurse. They're all retired now. And then Red Ron, they call him, because he was a trade unionist and he was always on the telly shouting about things, you know. And he called his cat Scargill. So these guys get together every Thursday and they review cold cases. But then there's a real murder within their community. And they're like, And they sort of recruit the local police. There's a police officer that's moved from the Met in London, and she's come to Kent for various subplot reasons. And she is desperate to be doing something exciting, but she's just a plod at the moment. And so Elizabeth, who's the MI5 lady, she manipulates things to get this copper onto the murder squad so that she's got an in, you know, and they can get information. And then it's like this poor young police officer rolling her eyes, Donna, her name is, Donna de Freitas, and she's kind of like, oh God, but then they have this really good reciprocal relationship, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And then the DI is sort of a bit of a sad character, and you know, but a lovely character. And it's about these very unlikely relationships between the older people, the young police officer, the older police officer, Bogdan, who's involved in it, and he's like, he might have got involved with the bad guys, but he's really quite a good guy. And it's such fun. It's really funny. Like, there's a vegan cafe in it called Anything with a Pulse. Yeah. I think that's brilliant. Like my favourite thing ever.
That is very good.
So cracking.
Is it a bit Miss Marplish in a way? Or?
I think it's more sassy than that. It's they are following the clues, and they do things like, okay, well, how long would it take for this person to drive from here to here? And they go out, and there's Ibrahim, you know, old Ibrahim being very careful. We could probably take 10 minutes off that. So it's fun, and it's clever, and it's procedural, but it's about the people. And not underestimating our older people,
Indeed
which I
not.
think absolutely. You know, you've not always been an old person that can't do
we
stuff
have not,
anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
And who's going to appeal to?
I think it's appealing to me greatly, and I think people that would be younger than me. But I think representation in books is really important. So older people are like, oh, finally, you know, I might be 80, but I can still do stuff.
And it sounds like it would be a great TV series.
I think it would make a brilliant TV series. It would be so much fun. Because they're quite funny, a lot of them, you know.
If we want any of these fabulous books, Lou, where do we get them?
Wardini Books, please. That would be pretty cool.
My pleasure, as always. You look after yourself. Talk to the same time, same place next week.
Cheers, Ken.